Hi everyone, Quiveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video, we are looking at the night sky in November, but we will concentrate on the constellations. In a recent video, we looked ahead to the month of November to point out such things as Venus, some of the upcoming meteor showers, Mercury's greatest elongation, which may not be visible from here in Ireland, as well as the upcoming full moon, which will no doubt be considered a supermoon. We're here on the 11th of November taking a look into the sky, and because we're going to deal with the constellations, the moon and the planets don't really matter too much. Last year at this time, at this date, the constellations were in the same places and have been for hundreds and thousands of years. The planets and the moon, of course, they vary depending on the year. For a given date, let's say the 11th of November, the moon isn't going to be in the same place at the same time on that date every year. We use a solar calendar rather than a lunar calendar. We will get the moon out of the way. We'll move forward to get the moon out of the way here, just to make sure the sky is nice and dark. And we can see there's Jupiter, Saturn, and Venus, but we won't worry about those too much. We're still nice and early in the evening. I'll push us forward to just 6:30. From here in Ireland at this time of the year, it will be reasonably dark this early in the evening. We can see the summer triangle, which is of course not a constellation, but starting to become the prominent shape in the middle of the sky once the sky is dark enough, is the square of Pegasus. So we are moving from the summer triangle to this more wintertime square. Of course, we can't use the square of Pegasus to estimate the season the way we can with the summer triangle. It's not quite reliable in the same way, but that does bring Pegasus, a famous mythological creature, nice and high, nice and prominent in the sky, along with those lines of stars being Andromeda and this fin shape over here for Perseus and this W for Cassiopeia. We can see that kind of a pentagonal shape there as well, which I believe is Auriga. Turning around to the north, we've got the Plough really quite low in the beginning of the night for the next couple of evenings. So if we move a little bit later, the Plough is circumpolar for here in Ireland. So no matter the time of year, as long as you're not in the bottom of a valley or next to huge buildings, the Plough is going to stay above the horizon for us here in Ireland all of the time. But as you can see, the Plough here is below the North Star. Here in Ireland, we're at 52 to 54 degrees north, depending on where you are exactly, and that's how high the North Star is going to be in the sky. If you're right down at the equator, the North Star will be down at the horizon, but we can see there's still quite a bit of distance here. If the North Star was a bit lower in the sky, the Plough would be under the horizon for this moment in time. So if you are living closer to the equator, whether that's the south of Europe or North Africa, of course, if you're in Algeria or Tunisia, you're still in the northern hemisphere, but you will be close enough to the equator that the Plough might be under the horizon. The same is true for southern parts of the United States and Mexico. So we can see the Plough here. It really doesn't matter the time of year. We're always going to see the Plough from here in Ireland. We can see the North Star, and that is the second brightest star in Ursa Minor. So Ursa Minor is this region here. Some people call that the Little Dipper, and then this is the Big Dipper pointing up to it. This is what we can see in the evening from the city. So even with light pollution, there are several constellations that are visible to the naked eye and recognizable to the naked eye. If we take a look at Vega over here, we know Vega's in Lyra, but we're not really seeing any of the other stars. Same with Altair here in Aquila. You might see a couple of the other stars there, but they are quite faint. If we take a look at Deneb and Cygnus, we can at least see the stars that make up the wings, and if you've got good... meteor, always nice to see. If you've got good eyes, you might be able to pick out Alberio there in the center part of the constellation of Cygnus. These things are all visible to the naked eye, even from the city. Moving forward towards morning time, these are some of the more famous constellations, so I have talked about them extensively. Of course, Orion, one of the most recognizable shapes in the sky. We've got Sirius as part of Canis Major, the Pollux and Castor for the heads of Gemini, and over here, a little bit tricky to see, but there's the V of the Hyades, the front of Taurus, and the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters, just at the back of Taurus. So all of these things are absolutely visible to the naked eye from the city. Technically, there is a lot more. If we take a look over here, some of these stars are in the constellation Draco, but they are going to be quite faint. They're going to be a little tricky to pick out. And, well, with the moon there, we can still just about see Cor Carolite, the brightest star in Canis Venatici, or Venatici, but we're not seeing the whole constellation there. So, as I say, that is what we can see from the city. I'll move us out into the countryside just to make things significantly easier to see. I almost always say that we will look at the sky from the countryside, so things are a little bit easier to see. But of course, it's not a small change. The difference is quite significant. Now that we're out in the countryside, we can definitely see the other stars that make up the constellation of Lyra. We're definitely seeing the rest of Cygnus, even if it's difficult to pick out which stars are which. We can see that little kind of rhombus shape there for Delphinus, and we can see a lot more of the stars that are part of the constellation Altair, or the constellation Aquila, with the bright star Altair as well. Looking just above Saturn here, I want to get roughly the same view. There we go. That square for the square of Pegasus is not really a square, but at least it is nice and obvious. Those stars are bright, they stand out from the background, which we would expect given that they're visible in the city. The fin shape of Perseus is still there, although it is a little trickier to pick out from the background stars, and we still have that W shape of Cassiopeia. Turning around towards the north, and now we've really got the full shape of the Bear, Ursa Major, not just the Plough or the Big Dipper. We can absolutely see the rest of the Little Dipper there as well, and we can see that kind of curvy shape of Draco. Those stars are still faint and difficult to pick out from the background, but they're certainly visible. And I believe Cepheus, the kind of house shape, is up there as well. So this is what we're getting as the sun goes down, and we're still quite early here, just coming up to 7 o'clock. We'll push forward towards morning time, not too close to morning time, not all the way to the sunrise, but certainly a little bit closer. And there comes the moon, bringing a little bit of extra light with it. But if we're looking for stars in the countryside, it won't matter too much. For fainter objects, the light of moon, of course, will have an influence. So we're definitely seeing the tail of the Big Dipper there, and we're seeing both of the stars that make up the constellation of the hunting dogs, Canis Venatici or Canis Venatici. We're seeing more of Gemini, the twins, but again, it's those two bright stars that are really prominent. Procyon, the brightest star in Canis Minor, is nice and bright, but it is difficult to fill in the constellation of the little dog. Even with the big dog Canis, we can kind of see a dog-like shape there now that we're in the countryside, but of course the lines of the constellation would really, really help. Yeah, Capella is there, so that must be Auriga. Again, these are some of the more famous constellations. All down here is constellations too, but they're not quite as famous and they're often not quite as obvious. For example, we have the shape of Leo the lion over here. We've got that sickle of Leo, and we've got the two brightest stars in Gemini. So in between Leo and Gemini, we should have, there we go, Cancer the crab. And even in the darkest part of the countryside, it's pretty difficult to pick out that shape. We can see there the line that makes up Procyon, or the line that makes up Canis Minor with Procyon, the brightest star. There's Canis Major looking reasonably like a dog, Gemini looking reasonably like twins. The Big Bear maybe kind of looking like a bear. I know that one's a little bit more difficult to imagine. The Little Bear certainly doesn't. We've got that. There we go. That's the house shape of Cepheus, and there is Cassiopeia, the W. And we've got the square of Pegasus here. This would be Cetus the whale, a pretty difficult constellation to imagine. So let's pull back towards that earlier time of 6:30 or 7. Get some of those other bright constellations into the sky. Saturn is in the constellation of Aquarius, so this kind of abstract shape doesn't have that many bright stars, but if you find Saturn, you found Aquarius, similar to how finding Jupiter puts you in Taurus, but of course Taurus is that little bit easier to recognize. We can see how the Pegasus constellation joins into the Andromeda constellation here. Of course, Andromeda can be a tricky one to spot, and we're also seeing Sagitta and Vulpecula there, those two small constellations that are inside the summer triangle but aren't part of the constellations that make up the points. We've also got Hercules and Corona Borealis over there. We are still expecting a nova, a bright star in Corona Borealis. Eventually, we'll get there. Bringing up the pictures just to finish off, of course, we've got the swan, the lyre, the eagle. They're a lot easier to recognize now. Pegasus, of course, the winged horse. We've got Andromeda there. Triangulum just underneath it. Can be a tricky constellation to spot. It does look like a triangle, but then again, it is only a triangle. It's not quite as recognizable as this pentagonal shape, or the very recognizable shape of the plow or the Big Dipper. We have the unicorn coming up here, Monoceros, because it only has one horn instead of Rhinoceros, which has a horn on its nose. Very difficult constellation to spot, very, very faint. Coming up towards morning time here. Yeah, we've got all of Canis Major there. We've got Canis Minor, very much looking minor compared to the Major. It is only a little dog. We've got two more dogs, the hunting dogs there, just underneath the bear. Turning around to the north here in the morning time, yep, there's Draco, the Little Dipper or Ursa Minor, the Big Dipper inside Ursa Major. There's our W of Cassiopeia and our kind of house shape of Cepheus. We've also got Camelopardus up there as well. So just a quick sort of update on what constellations are going to be where over the course of November. They're slowly changing, but we're not quite back into the real winter time where we'll see Orion and Taurus close to sunset. But we're also not in summertime where we're seeing the summer triangle and constellations like Scorpius and Sagittarius close to sunset. We are very much in transition, seeing these constellations kind of, halfway. Some of the summer constellations at sunset, the winter constellations at sunrise, but we're not quite fully changed over to what we'd expect for the long, dark winter nights. So I do hope you enjoyed this update. If you did like the video, please do like it. You can also subscribe to this YouTube channel to support future videos. And if you'd like to read some of this information, you can check out my website, queebeanscontent.ie. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you back here next time.